If you're thinking about moving to Germany, there are a few things that you need to know. Important things, but no one really talks about them until you get here. Things like you have to register your address with the government within days of moving in. You'll get a TV tax or a bill even if you don't own a TV. You'll discover that Germans really, really, really love insurance. You might be paying money to a church that you don't even go to, and you might rent a really nice, beautiful apartment, and then turns out it doesn't even have a kitchen. In this video, we're breaking down 5 things that genuinely surprised us from living in Germany, and what you can do about each one so you don't lose money or lose sleep about them. I'm Lee, and Betty's my wife behind the camera. And we've been living on and off in Germany for about 30 years now. And let's start with one thing that can get you in real trouble fast if you don't do it: registering your address. All right, so first things first, and the very first thing you need to do when you move to Germany is register your address, or Anmeldung. And this occurs, you have to do this in person at the local administration office. Normally that's called the Bürgeramt. And this is something that we absolutely do not do in the United States. And I'm pretty sure they don't do it in Canada, Australia, or the UK either. But in Germany, it's essential and it's the law. So what you do is when you move into a place, your landlord's going to give you a document which is called the Wohnungsgeberbestätigung. And really, I think that translates into literally as the apartment giver confirmation. And basically this paper says who moved in, to what address, on what date, right? So everybody who moved in with you, if it's you and your family, whatever, where you moved, on what date you moved in. And then you have to take that to the Bürgeramt to register. And if you don't have the landlord confirmation, you're not going to be able to register your address. And here's where things get stressful. Because you have to do it within 14 days of moving in. And in some cities, depending on where you live, it may be very difficult to get an appointment. So what happens if you don't register your address? So number one, you can be fined. And I think the fine can be up to €1,000. And other things, it may be difficult to sign up for utilities, for your electricity and things like that. It might be difficult to open up a bank account. And obviously, internet and phone service, you might have a hard time getting that as well. And also, if you're moving here, you probably want to be a resident, and you cannot apply for German residency if you don't have your Anmeldung. If you move addresses in Germany, so if you move within Germany, you don't have to deregister your address, but the next place you move to, you have to register into. That's what you have to do. But if you leave Germany, then you do have to deregister your address. And that's very important. When you deregister, they're going to give you a document. They're going to give you proof that you deregistered from your last address. And it's very important to keep that document, to keep that proof, even if you leave Germany. And I'm going to explain why that's important in our next step. All right. And once your address is registered, congratulations. That's when Germany really knows you exist. And that's when the next surprise is going to show up in your mailbox: a bill for a TV tax, even if you don't own a TV. So the next thing you need to know about is that you're going to have to pay a TV and radio contribution or a tax called the Rundfunkbeitrag. Now, technically, it's not a tax because you don't pay it to the government. You actually pay directly to the broadcasting company, I think is who collects it. And so what happens is when you register at your address, then it seems like within a week, it's going to be really quick after you register your address. You're going to get a notification in the mail from the broadcaster, and they're going to request your bank information because they're going to want to withdraw your contribution every month from your bank account. And so, like I said, that happens so fast that it'll spin your head. So it's not super expensive. Right now, it's about 18 euros a month per household. So you don't have to pay for everyone that lives in the house. There's one price for a house. So if you move in with like a roommate or something like that, then you guys would split the Rundfunkbeitrag, I guess. So you have to pay this even if you don't own a television. You may never watch a television or anything like that. So for us, we pay it. They take it. It's 18 euros a month, but they take it, I think, once every 3 months. So there you go. So obviously we pay it. We do not watch German public television. We don't even have a connection for it. We basically, anything we watch on TV, we stream it via the internet. And unfortunately, your Rundfunkbeitrag does not cover internet costs. You have to pay that separately. So we pay it. Now, for what it's worth, from what I've seen of German TV, it seems like they have some pretty good options. They have some pretty good programming. But anyway, 18 euros a month, you have to pay it. And what if you don't pay? So if you say, well, I don't watch TV, I don't like it, I'm not going to pay it, you're not going to get my bank information. So from what I understand, you could be turned over to a collection agency to handle that. And also this can affect your credit score in Germany if you don't pay your TV tax. And here's where it's one reason why it's very important to keep that documentation when you deregistered from your house or from your apartment, and if you leave the country of Germany. Because you would think, right, if it's automatic when you register into your house or apartment, if it's automatic that they notify the TV company that they need to start charging you, you would also think that if you deregistered that they would notify the TV company to stop charging you. But that doesn't happen. So when we moved out of Leipzig, we deregistered, moved back to the United States, and we were still charged several months for the Rundfunkbeitrag. I eventually had to contact the broadcasting company. I had to provide them proof, that document that I deregistered from our house, and eventually they stopped charging us. And eventually, several months down the road, they actually refunded us the money that they charged us for that TV tax. So there you go, your Rundfunkbeitrag. All right, so once you've made peace with paying for a TV service that you may never watch, the next question was, so what else do we have to pay for? What else, or do we not know about that we need to pay for? And that's when Germany's love of insurance steps in. Okay, so the next topic we're going to cover is insurance. And Germans really love insurance. Okay, so you probably already know that everybody in Germany has health insurance, and that's absolutely required. And that's one of the most important things you have to have if you're going to become a resident in Germany is health insurance. And of course, if you're going to drive a vehicle, you're going to have auto insurance. And if you own a house, you're going to have homeowners insurance and all that. But there are several other types of insurances that may not necessarily be required, but almost everybody in Germany has them, and they're considered normal. And a lot of them really kind of make sense, I think. So the first one is what's called Privathaftpflichtversicherung. And that's a big word. Basically, it means personal or private liability insurance. Right? So personal liability insurance, I have never heard of this before I moved to Germany, but I think over 80% of Germans have it, and it makes a lot of sense, honestly. I mean, we've had it for several years. Luckily, we've never had to use it, but I kind of think it's the kind of thing that we should have, makes sense. They should have it in the United States, I think, to be honest with you. So the Privathaftpflichtversicherung, what it does, it protects you if you accidentally cause damage, injury, or financial loss to someone else or their property. That can happen much easier than you really think, right? I mean, it could just be like in day-to-day activity, right? So for example, you go to someone's house and you break something in their house, right? Or you bump into someone's car with a shopping cart and scratch it, or you cause a bike accident, right? And someone who wrecked their bike, they can't go back to work for a while because of you, right? So your insurance might help pay their salary, or you flood your neighbor's apartment. Maybe you installed a new kitchen yourself because you had to, and we're going to get to that later, but you installed a new kitchen and the sink or the dishwasher flooded and it went down to your neighbor's apartment and caused damage there. So Privathaftpflichtversicherung would help you to pay for the damage you caused in their apartment. Now, a real world example of this, one of my former colleagues, when I worked in Leipzig, he went out for a family lunch. I think it was a Sunday, and went for a nice family lunch or whatever. And he accidentally did something. He knocked his mother-in-law's cell phone off the table. It hit the hard patio or whatever and shattered, right? So he just reported it to his insurance company, and they replaced her phone. He said it was very simple. They hardly asked any questions, and it was quick like that. So it definitely seems like it makes sense if you have to use it. Now, good news about the Privathaftpflichtversicherung is, at least for us, it's really inexpensive. So Betty and I, we both pay, I think it's 51 euros a year, and it covers both of us. So it really seems like a pretty good deal. And like I said, I think we should have it in the United States. It really makes a lot of sense to me. All right, the next insurance I want to talk about, a very common insurance, is called Hausratversicherung. And basically this is home contents insurance, and it covers the things that are inside of your house. Not the building itself. It's not homeowners insurance. So it typically covers, stuff like furniture, electronics, laptops, computers, TVs, appliances, clothing, jewelry, bikes, everyday items, valuables and stuff like that. I guess in the United States we have this, and it's called your high value, your valuable property insurance. But I don't think as many people have it in the United States. I don't think it's nearly as common in the U.S. as this is in Germany. So it protects against stuff like fire, water damage from burst pipes and stuff like that. Again, maybe your do-it-yourself kitchen had a problem. Floods for rain as well, theft, burglary, storms and hail, and vandalism. And some policies will even repair your, even though I guess this is part of the house, but some of these policies will repair to have a locksmith come out if your home is broken into. Or also maybe temporary storage if you have to move your stuff out, right? So it does not cover the building itself. That would be like the property owner insurance. It doesn't cover the walls, the roof, the windows, or permanent fixtures. That's the owner's insurance. So, it's not legally required, but most Germans have it. And again, it's not very expensive. Betty and I pay, I think, around 86 euros per year for our Hausratversicherung. So it's a good peace of mind, and it's hard to argue with. All right, and the last insurance we're going to talk about is very important for you dog lovers out there. And I think this covers horses too. So big, it's bigger animals, right? And this is called the Tierhalter Haftpflichtversicherung. That's a mouthful. But basically it means the animal owner liability insurance, or pet owner liability insurance. And it covers damage or injury that your pet causes to other people or their property. So, even if and I'm sure, probably some people have something like this in the United States. I personally never had it. All my dogs have always been very gentle, and you might think, oh, I've got a really nice, very well-behaved dog. I don't need to have liability insurance. But even if you're a friendly dog, and maybe it doesn't bite someone, which typically is what you think about. Your dog's going to get aggressive, but maybe it's so happy, it's running in the park, it runs into someone and knocks them over, and causes an injury there. Cause a bike accident. Maybe they're running, they run across a trail and knock a bike rider over or something. They damage a car, or obviously if they bite someone or another animal. And so this is important because just like and I don't know if I mentioned this, but your personal liability insurance, your animal liability insurance, there's no upper limit on what you could owe. So it really makes sense to have insurance. And I think in some German states, and I don't know which ones, but I think in some of the states it's mandatory. So if you own a dog, you have to have this pet owner's liability insurance. But in everywhere, it's strongly recommended. And I would venture to guess that, I would say probably well over 90% of German dog owners probably have this insurance. And sometimes, if you're moving into a place and you have a pet, your landlords will require you to have this pet liability insurance before you move in. One thing that's important to know, though, this is your liability insurance, so it doesn't cover like vet bills for your pet. So that would be, you'd have to get a separate pet health insurance to cover that. So this does not cover that. And so when we had a dog a few years ago, we had this insurance, and it was like, I think this one was a little more, I want to say around €105 per year. I may be wrong about that, but it wasn't incredibly expensive. But again, I think it's a good thing to have, like the other insurances. They're not really expensive, but they make a lot of sense. They give you peace of mind, and if you need to use them, I think you're going to be very happy that you have them. All right, so. And there's other insurances too. I'm sure there's some that I'm missing that a lot of people have. If I missed, your favorite insurance or something you think that's very important, please let us know in the comments, right? So if you think the insurance culture is confusing, the next one really surprised us, right? Surprised us even more, because this one's not about what you buy or what you own or anything like that. It's about, what you marked on a form maybe many years ago. And I'm talking about church tax. Okay, so another big financial shock for many people moving to Germany is the church tax, or the Kirchensteuer. And so something that is kind of misleading about this, you'll hear some people say that it's depending on where you live, which state you live in, they'll say it's either 8 or 9% of your salary, but that's not correct. It's 8 to 9% of your income tax, or your Lohnsteuer. And so it's not your total salary. So for example, I guess if you owe 10,000 euros in income tax to the government, then depending on which state you live in, you're going to owe 800 or 900 euros for your church tax. So it's a surcharge, but it can add up really fast, right? So what does this money do? Like, why would anybody need to pay a church tax? So it funds, stuff to run the church, right? So the staff of the church, and also some churches have kindergartens. So it pays for the kindergartens or helps fund those. Hospitals, a lot of hospitals in Germany are sponsored by churches, so it funds those, and also social services. But here's a trap if you're moving here, right? So if you never go to church, right? But you can be liable for this, right? By simply being baptized as a member of a church, Catholic or Protestant, many, many years ago, even if you were baptized in the United States, right? So when you register, when you do your Anmeldung, or when you fill out employment paperwork for your job, typically you're going to be asked to declare a religion. And the choices will be, I think, the ones that collect tax are Catholic, Protestant, I think Jewish is one, and I think that's I think that's the three that can collect from the church tax, or also you can declare no religion, I think. Now, if you declare no religion to avoid the tax, but you're technically still a member of a church back home in another country, wherever you come from, you could have a problem later, because if the church finds out that you're actually a member of a church, if the authorities find out about it, for example, you have a child and you want to get the child baptized, or you want to have a wedding in a church, they can sometimes back charge you for the taxes that you should have paid since you've been here. So be careful with that. Now, if you want, so say you got here and you don't really go to church, but you checked out the form, you said, okay, I'm Catholic or I'm Protestant or whatever. If you want to legally stop paying, then you have to go to the government office and perform what's called a Kirchenaustritt. And this is like an official church exit. And this costs around 30 euros, and you have to receive a certificate from that to prove you've done it in order to get out of paying the church tax. And now, just so you know, if you don't pay the church tax, if you leave the church, or if you've never entered it when you came here, you never paid the tax, you're generally barred from church sacraments, stuff like communion, church weddings, or even having a funeral at the church. You typically can't have that if you have not been paying the church taxes. So it kind of makes it feel like they do religion as a subscription service, if you will. You pay your money and you get the services. If you don't pay the money, you're not going to get the services, right? Okay, so now that all the paperwork and taxes are done, the last shock is not is physical, right? It's a physical shock you're going to get. So you found your dream apartment. You went in, you did a viewing, a month ago when the former tenants were there. Now they've moved out. You walk into your apartment, you look around and you realize something's missing, right? Wait a minute, what's not here? It's not a chair. It's not a lamp. The entire kitchen. That's right. It doesn't have a kitchen. All right, kitchens or lack of kitchens. All right, so you move into your new place, you get there. Oftentimes they don't have a kitchen. And when I say they don't have a kitchen, I mean they don't have a kitchen. And sometimes they don't have light fixtures, right? So what you'll find literally is you'll go into the room where maybe the kitchen used to be, where a kitchen should be, where it was when you did your apartment viewing, and you've got a big room and all you have are some electrical outlets, some plumbing hookups, and maybe where the exhaust fan goes. There's no cabinets, there's no stove, there's no sink, there's nothing, right? Just an empty room. And oftentimes there's no light fixtures either. They're just wires hanging out of the ceiling where you have to hook up your own light fixture. So typically you provide stuff like that when you move into an apartment, right? Now, so you buy everything, and when you move out of the apartment, you take it with you, right? Wherever you're going, right? And I'm not really sure. I've never done that part. I've never taken a kitchen with me, so I don't know how it would go. It seemed like you would have to worry about the measurements. But anyway, people take their kitchens with them when they move. Trust me, right? So in our case, so here's a picture of what our kitchen looked like when we moved into our house. And here's a picture of what it looks like now. So I think we have a really nice kitchen, but it was just a empty room when we first moved in, right? So, and a real problem with this is time, not only financial. Obviously, this may be a lot of money you weren't planning on investing when you moved into a new place. So you got to buy all this stuff, but also timing to get it installed, right? And so, from our experience, our own experience, it can take several months to get your kitchen installed. And so you might be living in your new place for a month or so with nothing in the kitchen. And so it could be, obviously, that's going to be a big problem if you don't have a functioning kitchen. And, our situation, I think, was even worse. So we ordered a kitchen, and the home store we ordered our kitchen from, it included installation. That was included in the price of the kitchen. Right, so they do that. You pay the store for your kitchen with installation, and they hire a contractor to come set it up for you. Right. So in our case, the store calculated that it was only going to take 2 days for the contractor to install the kitchen. The contractor came out, and they were like, "There's no way we're going to do this in 2 days." Right. So they start working. At the end of the second day, the kitchen wasn't even halfway finished. They simply packed up and left, and we were just left with a couple of cabinets hanging on the wall. I don't even think we had a sink or anything, or a refrigerator or anything like that. They just left. So that was a huge stressor and a huge problem. And it took about 6 months of going back and forth to the kitchen store, arguing with them, and say, "Hey, what's going on?" Finally, it got completed, but it did. It took about 6 months for the whole thing to be completely finished. And big problem with us was we had a tile guy. We had the Fliesenleger who was going to do our tiles, and he was supposed to have come on a certain date, but he couldn't come do his work because the rest of the kitchen wasn't finished. So that was just a huge headache, huge stress waiting for all this kitchen to get done, right? Now, sometimes the outgoing tenant or the homeowner, whatever the case may be, whoever's leaving, sometimes they will sell you their kitchen and they'll just leave it there. But you can't always guarantee that's going to happen. You have to be prepared to furnish your own kitchen unless the apartment or the house is listed with, I think it's called a Einbau Kusha, which I think means built-in kitchen. So if it has a built-in kitchen, then you're not going to have to worry about it. But otherwise, you might be stuck with paying several $1,000s to get your kitchen installed, right? So those are the topics, the 5 topics that really stress out a lot of people if they're not aware of them when they move to Germany. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video gave you a clearer picture of the hidden costs and maybe surprises associated with living in Germany. If it did, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more real-life insights to life from foreigners living in Germany. And it really is nice most of the time, trust me, despite these little surprises, right? So tell us in the comments, what surprised you the most? Was it the empty kitchens, the insurance culture, or the church tax? And or did I miss anything that you've experienced that I didn't cover, right? And so now that we've talked about the money side, taxes, fees, and apartments with no kitchens, wait until you hear about the social rules that we're expected to follow here in Germany, including why I'm expected to sit down to pee at my own home. So that video is coming out soon. Stay tuned and watch that when it comes out, and we will see you next time.